I almost didn't go to the party. It was New Year's Eve, and honestly, I was exhausted. Work had been chaotic all week, and the idea of small talk and forced cheer didn't sound appealing. But a coworker, someone I'd only worked with for a few months, had invited me to a small get-together at her house. She said it would be low-key, just drinks, music, and a countdown. I told myself I'd stop by for an hour. Her house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind where everything looks identical and the streets are dead silent after dark. When I walked in, there were maybe 15 people there. Mostly co-workers, a few neighbors I didn't recognize. Everyone had a drink in hand. Music was playing softly, nothing loud enough to feel like a real party. That's when I noticed him. He was standing in the kitchen, leaning against the counter like he'd been there for a while. Tall, clean-cut, dressed casually but neat. He looked up and smiled when I walked in. "Hey, you made it," he said. I paused. "Yeah. Sorry, have we met?" He laughed quietly. "Not officially. I didn't think much of it. I assumed he was a friend of the host who just recognized me from work events or photos. People mingle. Names get passed around. We ended up talking on and off throughout the night. Nothing inappropriate. No red flags at first. He was polite, soft-spoken, a little reserved, but he knew things about me. He mentioned that I lived alone, which wasn't something I advertised at work. He joked about how bad the roads get near my apartment when it snows. He even commented on my coat, said it was a good choice, considering you almost went with the black one. I laughed it off every time. I figured my coworker had mentioned details about me, or maybe I'd said something without remembering. Still, something felt off, not threatening, just unsettling in a quiet way. Around 11:45 p.m., I went looking for the host. I found her in the living room refilling drinks. I tried to sound casual when I asked her who the guy in the kitchen was, the tall one with dark hair. She frowned. She asked me to describe him. I did. Her expression changed, just slightly. Confusion, then discomfort. She told me she didn't invite anyone like that. She assumed he was my guest. I remember laughing nervously and saying it was probably just a misunderstanding. She shrugged it off, but the mood between us shifted. When I went back to the kitchen, he was gone. Midnight came quickly after that. We all gathered in the living room, counting down with the TV. People cheered. Glasses clinked. I scanned the room, half expecting to see him leaning against the wall. He never showed up. I didn't see him leave. No goodbyes. No coat grabbed from the pile. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a sense of dread I couldn't explain. My phone showed one missed voicemail. Unknown number. Timestamp, 11:59 p.m. I listened to it. First, there was nothing. Just static. Then breathing. Slow. Deliberate. After a few seconds, a voice whispered my full address. I reported it. Nothing came of it. I moved out 2 weeks later. We rented the cabin specifically because it was isolated. New Year's Eve had been chaotic for all of us that year, and we wanted something quiet. No crowds, no parties, just a reset. The listing mentioned spotty cell service and said the nearest town was about 40 minutes away. That sounded perfect. The drive up was long and dark. By the time we arrived, the sun was already down, and the woods around the cabin felt endless. Thick trees, no visible neighbors, no road noise, just silence. Inside, the cabin was warm and normal, almost too normal. We unpacked, started a fire, cooked dinner, and drank a little. Music played softly from a Bluetooth speaker, though it kept cutting out. Someone joked that the place felt off-grid. By 11:30 p.m., we were relaxed, a little buzzed. Someone suggested stepping outside before midnight to watch for fireworks in the distance. We expected faint flashes from towns far away. At around 11:50, the first firework went off. It didn't sound distant. It sounded like it came from somewhere behind the cabin. We laughed at first. One of my friends said maybe another group had rented nearby and were celebrating early. But when we looked into the trees, there was nothing. No porch lights, no voices, no cars. Then another firework launched. This one was louder, closer. We stepped farther off the porch, scanning the tree line. The woods swallowed light. Even with the porch light on, visibility dropped off fast. Still nothing. As midnight approached, the fireworks continued, one every 30 seconds or so. Not rapid, not chaotic, measured, almost paced, and each one sounded closer. Someone pointed out that the direction kept changing. First behind the cabin, then off to the right, then behind us again, like whoever was setting them off was moving. At 11:59, a firework exploded so close we felt the heat against our faces. That's when the joking stopped. We ran inside. Someone locked the door. Someone else closed the curtains. We turned off the lights and stood there in the dark, listening. The only sound was the fire popping in the fireplace and our own breathing. Midnight came. No countdown, no cheers, just silence. The fireworks stopped completely. No footsteps, no voices, no sound of someone walking away. The silence stretched on, heavy and unnatural. None of us slept much. Every small noise felt amplified. The creak of wood, the wind brushing the cabin walls. Around 3 a.m., someone swore they heard movement outside, but no one wanted to check. Morning came slowly. When we finally went outside, the frost on the ground made everything painfully clear. Firework casings were scattered around the cabin, but not randomly. They were spaced evenly, forming a rough circle. Each one placed several feet apart, like someone had taken their time. There were footprints in the frost leading away from the cabin and into the woods, none leading toward it. We packed up immediately and left early. No one suggested staying another night. We never rented a remote cabin again. I requested the Uber at 12:18 a.m. New Year's Eve had already passed, but the city still felt restless. Fireworks echoed in the distance, but the streets near my apartment were quiet, almost empty. That strange window of time when the city feels like it's holding its breath. The Uber arrived faster than expected. I remember checking the license plate twice because it pulled up almost immediately. The driver was friendly, talkative, not aggressive, just persistent. He commented on how quiet the night felt, how people get careless on holidays. He asked if I'd had fun, asked if I lived nearby. Then he asked if I lived alone. I didn't answer that. He laughed softly and said, "Funny night. People disappear on nights like this." I assumed he meant people losing track of friends or getting too drunk. The rest of the ride was quiet. When we reached my apartment, I got out quickly. I waited until the car drove off before unlocking the door. It was something I always did without thinking. Inside, I checked my phone. The ride was still active. At first, I thought it was a glitch. The app froze sometimes. But the car icon was still there, parked a block away. I waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then the icon moved. Slowly, it started circling my block. I contacted Uber support. The automated response told me there was no active driver on my ride. I sent screenshots. They escalated the issue. Then nothing. I stood by the window, lights off, watching the street. Car drove by slowly. I couldn't tell if it was the same one. At 2:03 a.m., the ride ended on its own. The next day, Uber emailed me. They apologized and said the driver account associated with my ride had been previously deactivated years earlier. They wouldn't explain why. I looked it up myself. The driver's name matched a man reported missing after New Year's Eve. Multiple passengers had complained about unsettling conversations with this driver before he disappeared. The case went cold. No body was ever found. I deleted the app that night. Every New Year's Eve since, I double-check that my door is locked. I'm posting this here because it's been a year and I still think about it every night around midnight. Last New Year's Eve, I was a sophomore living in a nearly empty dorm on campus. Most students had gone home for winter break or were out partying. I had planned to go to a house party with friends, but I got sick earlier that day and decided to stay in. Fever, headache, the whole thing. I figured I'd just sleep through the night. By 10 p.m., the dorm was silent. No music, no doors slamming, just the hum of the heating system and the occasional sound of someone walking far down the hall. I remember thinking how strange it felt to be on campus when it was that empty. Universities aren't meant to be quiet. Around 10:45, I got a text from a friend asking if I was sure I didn't want to come out. I said no. She joked that I was missing the countdown of the year. I turned my phone face down and tried to sleep. At 11:12 p.m., someone knocked on my door. It wasn't aggressive, just 3 slow knocks. I assumed it was an RA doing rounds or maybe someone who had the wrong room. I didn't answer. The knocking stopped after a few seconds. Then, about a minute later, it happened again. Same rhythm, same force. I called out, "Yeah." Through the door. No response. I didn't open it. I told myself it was nothing. Old buildings make noise. People wander when they're drunk. I put my headphones in and turned the volume up. At 11:40, my phone buzzed. It was a message from someone I didn't have saved as a contact. Just a number. "Are you staying in tonight?" I assumed it was spam or a wrong number and ignored it. At 11:55, there was knocking again. Louder this time. I stood by the door, listening. I could hear breathing. Not exaggerated or dramatic. Just someone standing there. Then my phone buzzed again. 5 minutes. That's when I locked the deadbolt. Midnight came. Fireworks went off somewhere in the distance. Faint enough that it sounded like popping wood. I didn't cheer. I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the door. At exactly 12:01 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A voicemail came through immediately after. I listened to it later. There's no voice, just the sound of footsteps in a hallway, and then a door opening, and then laughing, quiet, like someone trying not to be heard. The knocking never came back. The next morning, I checked the dorm's group chat. Someone had posted asking if anyone else heard. Someone walking the halls all night. An RA responded saying no one else had reported anything and security logs showed no card swipes on our floor after 9 p.m. Before the semester started again, campus police sent out an email saying there had been unauthorized access to one of the dorm buildings over winter break. No details. I moved out of that dorm at the end of the year. I still don't know who was at my door. But sometimes, right before midnight on New Year's Eve, I get a text from an unknown number that just says, "Still staying in?"